Hi everybody, my name is Pete Frisella. I'm a developer advocate on the Google Analytics team. I'm joined here today with Andrew Wales. He's a developer programs engineer on the team. So this is just another quick update. We want to do a recap of what's taken place in the last month or so, give you guys a little bit of heads up on some new features that came out, possibly some changes that may have taken place that you should be aware of. So with that, we'll just get started and get right into it. And Andrew's going to take it away with a little bit about Analytics.js and some collection changes.
Yep. And actually, we've got a couple changes to cookie domain configuration and cross-domain stuff, so we'll check it out right now. So the first thing I wanted to highlight was that we now have this thing called automatic cookie domain configuration. So before with Analytics.js or even GA.js, you had to specify what domain you wanted the cookie to be written on. Now we let you supply this auto argument for Analytics.js. And what that means is when you do that, Analytics.js is going to write the cookie at the highest level domain possible. So if, for example, you were trying to write a cookie, or if your site was example.co.uk, Analytics.js would try to write to co.uk. That would obviously fail. And the next domain we would try would be example.co.uk. That would succeed, so that's where we'd write the cookie to. So this is kind of the new default way to set up your cookie domain. And it should work in all of the main use cases, like one site with multiple subdomains, or if you're working with multiple domains, etc. So it simplifies that whole process.
Sure. So this has been actually probably around for a little bit. But it was just recently announced in the changelogs and officially added to the
Right, yeah. We actually had it out for a bit, but we just added it to the docs. And we updated all our code snippets on dev site. So this is now like the default way to implement.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. So the next update is for cross-domain auto-linking for forms. So for those of you who are already using it, we already offer an auto-linking plugin for Analytics.js that will automatically append the parameters that you need to any links that are pointing to another domain so that you can track across those domains successfully. But what we just added with this update was the ability to make this work for forms. So both get and post forms, you add this true argument at the end here, and that will try to append those parameters to the end of the form action as well. So one thing about this one, though, you definitely want to make sure you test this on your site before you actually deploy it. So there may be some cases where this, if you have something custom going on with JavaScript on that page, it might not work in all cases, but it should work in most. So just make sure you test it out before you deploy it. And again, just another way to make things simpler for cross-domain tracking. And then the last one, last update, this was actually out for a little bit as well, but we just got it documented. This is enhanced link attribution for Analytics.js. So this was a feature that existed for GA.js. What it does is it lets you, it makes your in-page analytics reports more accurate because it allows you to disambiguate between links on the same page that are pointing to the same URL. So really quickly, the way this one works, once you load the link ID plugin, which you'll see there, basically if you have a link on the page that's pointing to a URL, in this case like page 2, when a user clicks on that link, we're actually going to write the link ID to a cookie. And if that link, for example, if that anchor element didn't have an ID, we would look up in the DOM to try to find a parent element that did have an ID, and we'd use the first one that we could find. And then on the next page, when you actually send the page view, we'll include whatever that element ID is in the hit as part of this link ID parameter. And that's the way we're able to, in the in-page analytics report, tell that users came to this page 2 not from some other link, but from this specific next button, for example. So because of all that, because we rely on element IDs to make this work, it's really going to be most accurate when all of your links have unique IDs, or at least their parent elements should at least have unique IDs.
So it'll look up the actual DOM to check if there's IDs above or in the parent elements? Yeah.
Exactly, and that's actually configurable. So you'll see, I think we're showing you an example of the code snippet, but you'll see that there's a couple configuration options. You can configure like the name of the cookie, how long that cookie is going to last, but you can also tell us how many levels up in the DOM you want us to look for that element ID.
Cool, that's a nice little addition.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to the APIs. We just, like last week or so, I think it was, we announced 3 different changes for the multi-channel funnel API, core reporting, and management API. So there's a few things. Some of it's new data and a couple different features. So the first thing is multi-channel funnels. We added some additional data around AdWords, conversion paths, and interactions. So this is more around the IDs. So we already had pathing and interactions for AdWords, things like ad group and campaign, but this allows you to query for IDs now that are associated with those specific dimensions. So it's pretty straightforward. You can go and look at the reference doc for the multi-channel funnel and see this new data is in there and get some descriptions for these particular dimensions. The next thing is the core reporting API. We've added some new data again to the core reporting API. The minute was actually something that a lot of people had requested to have minute level data, and now we actually have this. So you can query by minute, which is pretty impressive actually when you do it for a long period of time. It's crazy that you get that much data back. And then we have the nth minute, which is kind of an indexed value for, which will show you basically index values from over the time period that you've specified. And then if you have the audience reports enabled within Google Analytics, we also added some dimensions and metrics around the audience reporting data. So this is now available through that. So if you have the access to that data, you can now pull this out through the core reporting API. And again, take a look at the Dimensions and Metrics Explorer. The link is there at the bottom. And this is where you can go and look at all these new data and see exactly descriptions and things like that and whether they're allowed in segments.
Now, is minute, is that also new in the front end as well?
Yes, this was also, so you might have seen it also in the front end, so the web interface. You would have seen it shown up there. And then it was released through the API a few days later. So, yeah, it's available in both places. We also enabled segmentation for a few different, so there's source medium. This is a relatively new dimension. We added source medium, which is combination or concatenation of source and medium. So this is also now allowed in segments. And then we have local item revenue, which is also now allowed in segments. So not all dimensions and metrics can be used in segments. And you can go to the Dimensions and Metrics Explorer again. There's actually an option to select on the front page. There's a little checkbox there, and you can select that, and it'll show you which dimensions and metrics are allowed in segments. And then also if you view the description of any dimension or metric, it'll indicate whether it's allowed in segments. So these two have now been changed to yes, allowed in segments.
And local item revenue is revenue in the local currency?
The currency, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, cool. The next thing is the data table response format that we've added to the core reporting API. So this is, if you use the core reporting API and you've made any requests, you'll know that the data comes back, and there's kind of two main components to that data. There's the column headers, and then there's the rows object. And the rows contains all of the data ordered by dimensions and followed by metrics. So in this example, we have some data for the query that says it's Google Nexus 7 is the mobile device info, I think is the dimension in this case, and then the metric of 180. So this is kind of like the default standard response you would always see with the core reporting API. However, we know that a lot of people want to take this data and use it in some sort of visualization. And one visualization tool API that we have here, obviously, is the Charts API. So part of the Charts API, one of the formats that's used quite extensively is this data table format. So we've added some capabilities now to the core reporting API that allows you to get data back returned in this data table format. So this is what the default response would look like. And this is what the response would look like with this new parameter. So if you make a query to the core reporting API now, you can specify this output query parameter. And if you set it to data table, you'll get something that looks a little bit like this. So instead of the rows object sitting within the response, you're going to have a new data table object. And that's going to contain two separate lists. There's going to be a columns list, which indicates the IDs, labels, things. This is the data table format for basically column headers. You'll get that. And then you'll also get the rows, but this is within the data table. You get this rows, which contains your data. So it's a similar set of data, but it's in this data table format. The cool thing about this is that you can take this data table, extract it out of the as an object, and actually feed it right into Google Charts, the visualizations, and it'll just work with that particular, like there's pie charts, there's columns, there's all these different visualizations that are available. And this response format works directly with them. So it just makes it a little bit easier to go from like requerying the data to actually getting it in a chart and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
So it's really nice and easy. So another important change that you should be aware of if you're using these dimensions and metric here is that we've deprecated three columns here. So one is the is mobile. So this is this was a dimension that indicated yes or no, whether the visit was on a mobile device. And we had the similar thing for is tablet, and then we had the entrance bounce rate. And these have been deprecated. So I encourage you to go read the data deprecation policy, and this explains kind of the process that we take to deprecate dimensions and metrics, and also what you should do and what steps you should take next when we actually deprecate data. There's a removal instructions kind of section in the policy there. So yeah, what's happened here actually is that we have a device category dimension, and so deprecated is mobile, and we've recommended that you use instead device category equals mobile. So you can set that as part of a segment or a filter, right? So this is also the same thing for the is tablet. Again, this is suggesting you should be using device category equals tablet to get exactly the same data. So those are the two main things there for the kind of the mobile tablet space. But then for the engine's bounce rate, we should be using instead the visit bounce rate. Right? So these are kind of equivalent measurements. We're just cleaning things up a little bit, making it more consistent for this particular case. So with this change, this also affected something in the management API. So we have default segments in the management API. You're probably familiar with this. There's always a list of default segments that we provide, and one of them was mobile traffic, and then there was one like tablet traffic. But that mobile actually included tablet, so it was kind of like confusing maybe a little bit for some people in terms of what they were getting. So we've cleaned this up, and we've changed these around just a little bit. So you'll know if you use the management API, you'll know that the default segments have an ID associated with them. So they're actually negative numbers. And prior to this change, the -11 or -11 was just mobile traffic, and it's been renamed to mobile and tablet traffic. So it includes both of those now. So we include mobile and tablet. That actually hasn't changed from a data perspective. You wouldn't see any change there actually. But we've also changed. We just made sure the naming is consistent. We have tablet traffic for the -13 ID. It's tablet only now. And the definition of that segment is device category equals tablet. The definition of the -11 is device category equals mobile or tablet, or mobile and tablet, sorry. And finally, we added a new segment. So this is a new default segment. It did not exist prior to this change. And it's -14 or -14, and we have a title of mobile traffic, and this definition of this is device category equals mobile. So if you've been using these segments, make sure if you check your queries that you have any saved queries, you might want to just review them to make sure you're getting the correct data that you think you're getting based on these new segmentation default segments that we have. And you can go and review this at the management API reference. There's it explains how to list these out and get this data back out. So this also obviously affects core reporting and management, because management is API is where you get the segments, and the core reporting API is where you actually use these segment IDs.
Right.
Okay. That's pretty much it for this month or so. We're getting towards the end. The holidays are coming, so we'll provide links for all of these changes that we discussed. And here's some additional resources that you may want to check out. Again, for all the dimensions and metric stuff, really you should go check out the metrics Dimensions and Metrics Explorer. It has all comprehensive data, and it gets updated automatically with these changes. Yeah, with that, thank you very much for joining us today. If you guys want to keep up to date with everything that's going on, we suggest you follow us on the blog. We have Google+ and Twitter handles you can follow us at, and please subscribe to our change logs. A lot of these things get announced through there. This is definitely the main source for all this stuff. But thank you guys for joining us.
I think that's probably our last show for this year, right?
It is, yeah. Holidays
cool. So everybody have a good holiday, have a good New Year's, and we'll see you in 2014.